Mr. Bowie.
Good evening.
It's a pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure being here.
On my humble show. It's a new CD, it's a new album, it's a new tour you're going to start soon.
Yeah.
Do you still count? Do you know what the number of the CD, the album?
Do you know, I have absolutely no idea.
You don't count?
20-something.
20-something.
Yeah.
I guess more into the 30s.
That's in recording studio. But I think with the 2 or 3 live things, we must be very close to 30.
I will ask you whether, you know, you still wait to see what everybody thinks. Do everybody like it? Or you say to yourself, hey, I'm David Bowie, I don't have to prove anything anymore.
Well, I never thought, hey, I'm David Bowie. I always thought, this is the work that I do, and I really, I don't, if I'm satisfied with the album and I know it's good, then I don't really pay much heed to anybody else about it. It has to stand up as being my work alone. I've been wrong several times in terms of whether I have an audience for that particular work, but that's not really part of the chemistry that I see is the work that I do. So I've been incredibly lucky in as much as over the years, my audience seemed to have been very accommodating of the kinds of things I've wanted to do. And they understand that there have been periods when I've vacillated from one thing to another quite fast and furiously and frenetically, maybe over-frenetically. My ideas have changed quite radically as well. But they have always looked at what I was doing. And so it seems to me that I have just about the same audience now that I had, in the very early 70s, 73. It's not really changed very much. At least that's been consistent in my life, is my audience have been incredibly loyal.
Although I have the feeling that there was a time that there was some frustration because people wanted, maybe naturally, to hear the old stuff.
Oh, yeah, and I backed away from it. I backed away from it tremendously, but I came out of what I consider to be a really a desolate period in my life in the 80s, which was very bad. Some of it was a very bad time for me. Creatively, I found that there was a sense of indifference to what I was doing, a sort of stagnation that set in after the Let's Dance period, which was it was euphoric in itself. I mean, it was extraordinary and quite wonderful that I suddenly seemed to have this worldwide audience. But I hadn't anticipated what a change it can make to an artist to be received in quite that way, you know. And my reaction was to, my fallback position was to, I better write for this audience, which is the first time that I'd really done that. Primarily, I'd always written for me. And if I had an audience for it, that was fantastic. But I started writing for this supposed audience. And I just really, I felt that I really lost the map. I was way off, and I wasn't enjoying myself.
And what took you out of it?
Well, meeting this guy, Reeves Gabrels, I suppose, was really consolidated what had been going through my mind for some time. In 1988, the last part of the second huge world tour that I was doing at the time, where I was just so exhausted with everything, and more exhausted because I was dragging around a show and a bag of ideals and expectations which were second-hand to me. I didn't want them. I didn't want all that, and yet I felt I'd been trapped into all this. But my own fault. I trapped myself into all this. Certainly nobody else to blame. But then then Reeves really sparked off my imagination into a way out of that dilemma, a way out of that quagmire. And it was really to strip everything down that I'd done, completely and utterly, virtually throw it all away.
I have to tell you, as a person that grew up on your music, really, that I find it very exciting.
Thank you.
Mainly because, you know, putting talent and beautiful music aside, mainly because I find you more direct, more exposed.
Yeah.
Do you find it?
Yeah, I think I am. It's not a premeditated thing. It seems that over the last few years, I think it began with this, as I say, this early 90s. In a way, I was recapturing a lot of the enthusiasm that I originally had for writing and for singing and performing. And I guess that I just had to do it from a different way so as to keep it exciting for me and not to start falling into the same traps that I felt that I'd fallen into before. And the material just became, for me, significantly stronger than it had been for many, many years. And it heartened me, and I think I just started writing in a very different way, from a more personal point of view, less from kind of the narrator form or this Greek chorus thing that I'd adopted somewhat, you know?
And if I may take an example, the title song, Reality.
Yeah. It's
well, it's reality.
Yeah,
it's reality. And I get a feeling that you go back to your beginning.
Yes.
To your, early years.
Yeah.
Say, tragic youth you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a very clumsy metaphor, but I mean, it kind of sets up the scene I wanted to create about the seductiveness of life and when you're a young man. And
maybe clumsiness. I don't agree with you, but clumsiness. But maybe if it is, it comes together with the erectness.
In rock, a clumsy metaphor can work wonders in rock if it's set to the right backbeat.
And then you talk about.
It can seem almost intelligent.
And you talk about separating yourself from it with walls of sound. And then running and hiding in wretched highs, if I remember well, right? Yes.
I think I'm facing a lot of the dilemmas that I placed in front, the obstacles that I gave myself. The wall of sound thing, I think, is an easy explanation. It was merely a metaphor for really work addiction. It's always all my life I've been kind of a workaholic, but for some of my life I used it as a way of avoiding relationships and avoiding kind of being part of the swim of society, because I had a rather romantic idea that the artist should be kind of isolated and in some kind of ivory tower, of distancing himself from the things that he was writing about. But of course what you end up doing is only writing about your loneliness, which is what I did album after album. And you go into a kind of a madness. But I think, I'm finding it a lot easier to write about my own experiences in life.
Is it a period in life that you go back and think it over again? Because let's take, for example, the persona thing. I think it's connected to what you just said, being romantic and being lonely and taking a persona, melting into a persona, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was, it was purposefully devised because I had a strange idea when I was younger that what I really needed to do, as much as anything else, was bring a sense of theatre to my kind of rock and roll. I didn't want to do quite what had been done before. There was something else I wanted to bring to it, a multi-dimensionality. It was kind of, I guess, the arty crowd in London at that particular time. We were kind of aware of this new thing, postmodernism, which was really striking at the heart of everything that was known, and it was tearing apart all the absolutes. There were no more absolutes, there were no more givens. It was about duality and pluralism, and it all seemed ripe, and the time for distancing from the art form that you were in and actually writing about it with the art form. So rock referring to rock was a new kind of, it was terribly exciting. It was, we knew we were kind of deconstructing the whole apparatus of this particular.
Could it stay on stage and be there, limited to the stage, or did you take it with you?
No, of course, no. I mean, not at first, but I think at times, I started to not particularly see the line drawn between the offstage and the onstage character. But that's been so well documented now, I kind of,
Tired of it?
It's not so much tired of it, it's just that I find it so not relevant to who I am now and what I do now. I mean, I had a, really troublesome period, and the whole of the 70s were a roller coaster ride which probably contained more negativity for me than positivity. Really the last 12, 14 years have been the most positive in my life. Things have kind of, some sense of stability has come out of everything for me. Not necessarily a sense that I'm any writer about anything, that I've found any secrets. I certainly haven't. But I now feel that I have the tools to cope with any personal chaos that may still be buzzing around in my mind.
You find yourself amazed by the fact that you not only survived in this chaotic field of rock and roll, but survived in a way of staying in the front line, staying relevant, staying so influential.
Yeah,
Does it amaze you?
Yeah, it is. I mean, sort of at 25, you have no consideration for the future in quite that way. I don't have a consideration so much for the future now. I mean, I do try and take things, as the old adage goes, on a one day at a time basis. That's very much how I cope. But back then, you really had no idea of what the future, what this meant in one's life, in one's destiny. The idea of having a future really wasn't there. It was all pipe dreams. And
although you dealt a lot with the future.
Yes, well, again, it's the baggage of the writer to sort of, throw theory into a parallel universe of some kind. And my parallel universe was often the recent or the near future,
Can you say now?
But now, let me finish, is that I do have, the only sense of future that I have now is one that my daughter inhabits. So I have the future more material through her being and through her eyes. That, so I tend to want to, and out of necessity, have to think in a more positive way, because I'm not talking about just me anymore. I'm talking about a small child who needs to know that her father is positive and has a nurturing idea of what the future can bring. Because
she's 3 years old.
Yeah, just coming up to 3. Because it would be awful for her to be 12 years old and say, Dad, those things you were writing in 2003, you were saying that everything's awful and the world's going to end, but you knew you just had me. Where is that? Thanks a lot. You know what I mean? So you have to kind of really, you change your focus considerably in that situation, because my natural inclination is to be far more, I wouldn't say existentialist at all, far more nihilistic about things, and it's my, I guess again, it's a neo-romanticism, the idea of it's all hopeless comes very easily to me, which is the fodder of an overactive imagination in a writer, sometimes. But now it's not a responsibility, I can't do that.